Thank you. Kelly, can you please take the roll call?
Trustee Bradall.
Here.
Trustee Brocchini.
Here.
Trustee Doggett.
Here.
Trustee Steele. And Trustee Villalobos.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the district digitally records the audio and video portion of the meetings. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during that time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name in the agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called on to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be unmuted. Okay, report on closed session topics. The board met in closed session regarding comprehensive school safety plans and security of school facilities tactical portion. And a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. With regard to the comprehensive school safety plans, a vote of 5-0, the board voted to approve the tactical response plans and are part of the that are part of the comprehensive school safety plans. The remaining non-tactical response portions of the comprehensive school safety plans are to be acted upon in the consent agenda. With regard to the conference of legal counsel about anticipated litigation, no action was taken. Okay, item 7, approval of the minutes of January 20th, 2021. It is recommended that the board approve the minutes of January 20th. Are there any questions regarding those minutes? Okay, I'll call on each one. Okay, Trustee Steele?
No questions.
Trustee Berconi?
No questions.
Trustee Doggett?
No questions.
Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 20th, 2021?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Kelly, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Sure. Trustee Bradall.
Here? Yes?
Trustee Brocchini.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Steele.
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, item 8, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion, which is not debatable and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so requests, any item shall be removed from this section and placed on the regular order of business following the approval of the consent agenda. Okay, are there any questions regarding the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda? Trustee Steele?
No questions.
Okay, Trustee Berconi?
No questions.
Trustee Doggett?
No questions.
And Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
I will second.
Okay, Kelly, can you take a roll call vote?
Trustee Bradall.
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Steele.
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
Item 9, communications. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda items or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name in the agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. LSEA?
Good evening. LSEA is very hopeful that we will be safely in the classroom soon. We have sent a response to the district around our MOU and hope to reach agreement at our next session on the 23rd. It will then be in the district's court to ensure all safety measures and agreements have been met. While our number one goal right now is to get safely back in the buildings, we just want to remind the board to be vigilant and responsive to other pressing matters, specifically surrounding the budget and money in this district. A few weeks ago was the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee meeting, which we'll be presenting this evening. These parent and community volunteers raised wonderful questions about how the money is spent, ensuring it aligns with the parcel tax language. They offered great ideas on what to do with the parcel tax funds. They shared new ideas and provided valuable comments. We wonder, where does it go from this insightful feedback and brainstorming? Who really does determine what the parcel tax funds in this district? Why is there a surplus each year? What happens with this extra money? Moving forward, board members, we hope you ask, where is the partnership in truly deciding what to do with this money? Last week was the board work study on the budget. We all can see it is dire. At the board meeting on January 20th, the district auditor mentioned a 7.7% reserve. Last week during the work study, Josie presented a 3% reserve. I'm not a math teacher and school district budgets are absolutely quite complex. However, I can see a big difference between the two numbers presented. Can't you? We appreciated the conversations, brainstorms, and comments from you at the meeting last week, but it seemed to end there. Where does the work on these ideas happen? Trustee Doggett wondered if staff would be a part of these decisions or be able to provide feedback. We wonder that too. Again, who is making the final decisions on how money is spent in Pacifica School District? As always, board members, we are always eager to have conversations. Call us, email us, come to a union meeting. We're happy to work with you and gain some clarity on the spending in this district. It truly seems to get murkier and murkier each year. Thank you.
Okay, CSEA?
Okay, can you hear me? Everybody says that. I'd like to thank Laverne for attending our meeting tonight. We really enjoyed having her. And I, again, encourage all board members to come and see us at the CSEA monthly meeting anytime you want. My name is Nicole Sayers, and I'm the president of CSEA Chapter 128. 11%. That is what the approximately 140 classified employees cost the district in salary. When I first heard this last Wednesday at the study session on budget, I was a little bit taken aback. I guess I had not been paying attention because I actually thought it was like 13 or 14%. Not that that makes a big difference, but somehow 11% sounds extremely low. And in spite of this, our classified employees are essential workers to this district, and they deserve to feel proud of themselves. They take on the vast responsibilities that keep the school district moving and running. Our classified employees catalog and manage the distribution of over 1,000 Chromebooks for staff and students. They offer personal attention to those of us who have internet issues. They work with students with learning and behavioral issues. They are working in the new learning hubs. They work in kitchens to serve hot food. They run school offices. They deal with staff payroll. They drive vans for students who otherwise might not even make it to school. They climb ladders and repair roofs. They work with electricity and paint walls. They clean and disinfect the schools and keep us all safe. They assist with the ever-growing administrative responsibilities, and they actually take their lives into their own hands when they help students and their families cross the street to get to and from school. And I'm not exaggerating because I've been there when there's been some close calls. Classified employees are essential workers who often put others before themselves. The classified employees are only 11% of our school budget. So I don't have all the answers for the school budget problem, but I do have the drive to be a part of the solution. And as I said on Wednesday, I would be happy to offer my time and energy to work with you. We all have to try harder to fix this issue so that all school staff can earn a living that is equal to the loyalty that they have given to this Pacifica school district. We have some really smart people in this district and within the Board of Trustees, and I am confident that if we all show respect and work together, that we will be able to come up with some solutions to this problem. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you. Okay, people wishing to address the board. I think we have Ilya Varnavec.
Hello.
Actually, Ilya, do you mind if I just stop you for 1 second?
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
So I just want to be clear, we're going to have a lot more visitors to this meeting than we typically have. And so anyone that has a topic that's not on the agenda, this is where you would make your public comment. If you want to speak in terms of the return to school, that should happen. We'll do the presentation and then we'll take public comment and then we'll have board discussion. So there are lots of other topics that people want to discuss, and so that would happen right here. So Ilya, are you in that category of people that have topics other than return to school?
I wanted to speak to the vaccine. I guess that is in that category that you mentioned.
That would fall in that category.
Sure, I can wait. Just
Perfect.
let me know when.
Okay, perfect. Let me just check the other Q&As there. We've got Nicole. Rachel Merlot's going to talk to the task force. Charlotte Allen. Okay. How about Charlotte Allen, please?
This is Charlotte Jacobs.
Oh, wrong Charlotte. Sorry.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
Charlotte.
That's okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. There we go.
Thank you. I would like to speak on leadership in general, but I have to admit that I am going to mention the term return to school. Is that okay that I speak now?
That's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me just get mine. Okay. I do not envy the position you find yourselves in navigating a school year during COVID. However, it is the responsibility, duty, and expectation of highly paid district staff to form a plan, maybe even multiple plans, whether they are liked or criticized, have to be tweaked or scrapped, align or don't align with other districts. It is your job. Nearly a year into COVID, we have yet to see or hear of a plan for returning to school, and I cannot consider what is attached to tonight's agenda an actual plan when there is no date suggested, no colored tier prerequisite, nor vaccination requirements, just mere questions to this regard. District administrators need not wonder why meeting after meeting, brave teachers and staff express their concern, confusion, feelings of neglect, and non-importance. District administrators need not wonder why so many families are frustrated by the lack of leadership and transparency. Other districts, for example, South San Francisco Unified, have spoken of plans since early in the school year, landing on a sound plan, including a county tier prerequisite in December. Here we are in February with no plan for our district. We understand the process for which a plan must come to fruition, including union negotiations, school board approval, county approval, and above all, in my book, the safety of teachers, staff, and the children they serve. And while all that has to be addressed, in order for those parties to rebuttal or have any opinion whatsoever, we must first be given a plan, not additional questions, not further discussion, a solid plan. You have been hosting discussion sessions with parents since July, collecting parent feedback formally since May, hosted task force meetings since October while receiving CDC feedback and watching surrounding districts move forward. All this time, watching and hearing and collecting, and yet no plan has been formed. Since there is still no solid plan approved or otherwise, I might as well throw out some suggestions. Last month, a trustee mentioned that your mission statement is quote unquote about the kids in regards to returning to school, when another trustee had highlighted that a whopping 82% of teachers do not feel safe returning. Well, let me tell you, if you take that stance and try to force teachers to return prior to a safe and well thought out plan, guess what? It quickly becomes about the kids, because many teachers will leave. Their salaries don't keep them here, that's for sure. And if it becomes a choice of risking their lives or the lives of their loved ones versus following their passion, despite however strong, I assure you, health and safety will likely win for many of our beloved teachers, and I wouldn't blame them for 1 second. Teachers have worked with no contract, teachers have worked with little support, teachers have worked with judgment and ridicule, and now they find themselves working with no plan. And I fear it will will be, yet again, thrust upon teachers with no time to prepare and no real feelings of support, safety, or priority for their well-being. We have asked for transparency from the district. When we do hear from you, it's the old kicking the can method, putting off decisions, pointing fingers at unions, needing more data, etc. But as we have seen from other districts, it is quite possible to come up with a plan based on science, logic, and most of all, care and concern for people. Yet this administration has stayed silent, sharing only county data and CDC recommendations, and now pointing blame at underpaid teachers as to why we didn't apply for a waiver. Unfair and shameful. Where is the leadership? We all want kids back in school, including teachers, but not at the cost of lives. So please come up with a fair plan, a real plan, an actual plan, and frankly, like 3 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, looking through the Q&A, I think the only other one that is not an agenda item would be Sheila Merlot.
Okay.
Hi. My daughter is attending Valleymar School and is in Leslie Hazelwood's 5th grade history class. Recently, we discussed how she could be a social ally, as the lessons she was learning about early colonialism left her feeling that she was only encountering the Native American culture within the context of destruction. As a parent, it's my responsibility to show my children that doing right is more important than being right. As a massively mobile world civilization, we are collectively redefining what it means to be from a place. Are we placeless people then in a region that has forgotten its past? What does it say about our society that so many of us have no idea who lived here just 3 centuries ago? We can all, as Californians, no matter whether we are first or second or 5th generation locals, acknowledge the legacy of the Ohlone people. We are all here now living on the land, and thus we are all inheritors of its past. When we consider the people who came before us, we begin to consider how we'd like to be remembered by those who will come after us. Injustice is real. It's your responsibility as PSD board trustee members to embrace our position as an educational community to honor Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, here, and pay respect to the local elders of the Ohlone people by enacting a practice of land acknowledgement before your school board meetings. I've submitted the California Legislature's recent law enacted as the AB 1968 Tribal Land Acknowledgement Act of 2020 for your discussion. Land acknowledgement is a transformative act meant to confront our place on Native lands and to build mindfulness of our present participation in colonial legacies. Show our community that doing right is more important than being right. I ask that you please add land acknowledgement to be added to your next agenda for discussion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think everyone else in the Q&A is for the return to school plan. So
Yes, I saw that.
Okay, so we'll go to correspondence. Dr. Olson?
I do not have any.
Okay, board superintendent communications. Let's see, do I have a board member that would like to go first? Otherwise I can.
I can go first.
Okay.
Oh,
Trustee Villalobos?
I know, I wrote things down. But, need to find them now. And I had it planned out so nicely. Well, let me just start with, I attended the CSEA meeting this evening, and there were concerns regarding the 11% being of the pie shaped and the employees doing a lot of different things. The surprising thing for me was hearing that there were only 4 maintenance people, and I thought we were hiring more people. One of the concerns coming from maintenance is that they would like more training, you know, on, for example, if they're doing electrical, you know, some more training on how to handle the electrical portion of it. And so I think I've heard that before in previous years, training for the classified people. The other thing is I did want to mention that I've been receiving a lot of emails about the returning to school. and also the land acknowledgement. And that is a new law. And so I wrote down everything nice, but a land acknowledgement, for example, and this is just going off the top of my head, would be like, hello, my name is Laverne Villalobos, and I am indigenous to the United States. I'm from the Omaha tribe of Nebraska. I'd like to acknowledge that we are sitting here on Custodian Ohlone land, and they have many accomplishments in the past that we should be respectful of. We're also sitting on land that was taken from them through genocide, slavery, what have you, and we should just acknowledge that we're here in the beauty of their land. So thank you. So that's just off the top, but you know, there are, I did go to the Native American caucus that I belong to, and many of them have been doing land acknowledgements in public school for a while now. And so I do have a sample of it, you know, if we put it on the agenda for a later time. The other thing that I did is I attended a webinar on suicide and the amounts of suicide that are going up because of our predicament that we're in. And one of the suggestions was, do we have a policy on when a child passes away, whether it's suicide, a car accident? So we should be following each passing in the same way. And so I wasn't sure if we had a policy on that or if we've discussed it before in the past. And that's it.
Thank you.
I can go next because I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that I have been getting a lot of emails about return to school. I do read all of my emails from parents. And because I've been getting so many emails, I wanted to take a moment to say that, you know, I appreciate the emails. And I understand how you feel. I am a parent in the district as well. I have a 7th grader at Ingrid E. Lacey, and the return to school is as important to me as it is to all of the parents and teachers and students. And I don't think anybody envies our position in having to come up with a plan and decide what to do during a pandemic. I don't think any of us predicted we would be in this position. This is a very difficult position because my child, like many children in the district, is struggling in some areas with distance learning. So I get it, and I wanted to let the parents out there know I understand, and I feel your frustrations. I feel it too, but we as a board and as a district are doing what we can with the information that is available to us. So I just wanted to say that because I didn't want to email anybody, you know, a whole lot. There was a lot of emails. So I just was like, let me just address it, everyone at once. I hear you. We are working to do the best that we can for everyone.
Okay, Linda, Rookie.
Yeah, so I'll just acknowledge too that I've gotten several letters. I was able to respond to a few, but very much heard, and there is a lot of thought and time and energy put into this. So thank you for your input, and we continue to accept that. It has been a lot going on. I've attended 2 RFQ meetings hosted by CHCs, which are the requests for qualification meetings from the architects regarding Measure O. So that's exciting, and we're moving forward in that area. I attended with Elizabeth and Josie, Brookwood Associates meeting, just to get an update on where workforce housing is. That was also a good meeting. I did attend the San Mateo County School Board Association membership meeting. You know, to my colleagues, there's lots of talk and hope that the future is good from the state and from the federal government for financial help in the schools, but of course, we still wait. I did, we were all at the PSD work study budget review, and I also on Friday and Saturday did my fourth master's in governance class for human resources and collective bargaining. So that's fun. Only one more to go. Anyway, that's it. And thank you.
Okay, Trustee Steele, do you have anything to report?
For the first time, I do. I would just like to give a thank you to the Valimar PTO. They allowed me to pretty much Zoom bomb. I didn't let anybody know. I apologize, but very welcoming, the whole community, both from the teachers, the parents, the administration. It was just a great feeling. So thank you for my very first Zoom PTO, and definitely not the last one.
Okay, and I had the same workforce housing meeting that Linda was talking about, and it's going along, not as fast as I had hoped 3 years ago, but it's going along. And band directors meeting, so just hashing out plans for hoping to get music going when most of them are wind instruments. It adds a complication there with COVID. And of course, the budget reduction work study that everybody else was at also, and the Pacifica Coalition meeting, which is always, it's a fun Zoom meeting because just hearing what all the different organizations are doing in Pacifica and working together, and it's always very upbeat. So that's actually been very enjoyable during the whole pandemic. And Dr. Olson, did you have anything to add? You're muted, Heather.
Still muted.
Still muted.
All right, here we go. Good. All right. Sorry about that. I was a part of the Pacifica Collaborative, but I would have to say that the predominant amount of my time has been working on the return to school plan and meeting with the associations this week. We met with CSEA on Thursday and LSEA on Monday.
Okay, I think we're going to go on to item 10, district business. The district goals. District values the goals provided in our local control accountability plan and strategic plan. All of our district board agenda items are tied to these goals. One or more goals are listed in the description of each board agenda item. The details for each of those district goals can be accessed on our district website, www.pacificasd.org. Okay, item A. Everyone's been waiting for the return to in-person learning plan and COVID update. Dr. Olson.
Perfect. I will get us started. Like I said before, we'll do the presentation and then we will take public comment on this topic, and then we will have board discussion. So we present at every meeting in terms of the progress. And so this night is a little bit more detailed because we are going to ask you to approve the plan as it is, and so that it can go to the County Office of Education for approval, and so that we can start to begin to return to school. So before we start, I would just like to, I also received a number of emails from parents, and I recognize that there's a really very wide range of thoughts in terms of returning to school and readiness in terms of returning to school. And we also have a number of teachers that are in the audience. And so I just want to acknowledge is that there are so very many different perspectives, and most are thankful that we have been safe and in terms of responding to the pandemic. Some parents report some students are struggling. Some parents report that students are thriving in distance learning. Some teachers are afraid to return. All teachers are working very, very hard in distance learning. Some teachers are excited about returning. Parents are exhausted. This is really, really hard. And students report missing school and missing their friends. Every single one of those things is true. And so we have to recognize that as we do this, is that there's not one perspective versus another. All of these things are true. And so tonight, as we speak, both as trustees and as the public, I'd like us to speak from our own perspective, because we are listening and we want to hear your perspective. The return to school is just one more step in a very long journey. So we will get back to school, but then we have another 12 to 18 months of responding to safety issues, returning to school, addressing social emotional learning needs, address learning needs. And so this is something that we're going to have to work together on for a long time. And so I want to just say, it's not just trying to get across the line, it's across the line and continue going as a community. So I'd like to thank the 50 members of the Return to School Task Force. Your input continues to be an important part of the return. And following the approval of the plan by the trustees, the task force will contribute to the development of training and communication tools that will be really crucial to a safe return to school. Often, in this kind of forum, what we're looking for is an imperfection or a limitation and reasons why things can't be done. So I will tell you, this plan has imperfections. Much of COVID is trade-offs and how you're going to make one choice versus another, but there are also imperfections. I may even point out some of those myself. However, what I would encourage us to do is find the parts of this plan that do work. There has been a lot of input in this, and so we would like to submit this to the county for approval and move forward on the important tasks needed for the safe return to school. So I will begin presenting tonight, and then we will take public comment. So just a couple things to know about where we are right now is on Wednesday, February 10th, is one of the things that we are expecting within the next few days is an announcement by Governor Newsom. We don't know what that announcement is, but we will continue to move forward until we hear from him on that plan. He's been working with legislators in terms of being able to assist schools to open. So I expect something that is in his plan will be supportive of our interest in returning to school. I just don't know what that is. The second component that, just has to be acknowledged is that there is concern around the variants of COVID and either both the contagiousness or the seriousness of them. And so, again, that's not something that we know. And one of the challenges in responding to the pandemic is we don't know what we don't know at all times. But I think that on both Governor Newsom's announcement and variants, we may see things that throw us a curve or are helpful and supportive. So tonight, what we want to, you can change the slide, Will. What we want to do is review, and we'll ask for approval on this plan for return to in-person instruction, which would be significantly the health and safety items and a brief description of hybrid learning, and then decide on a target for the return to in-person instruction. Next slide. I put this in front of us. I think most of us know what this is, but these are the tier assignments. And where we are now is that we are in the purple or the widespread because we have an adjusted case rate just over 15. The positivity rate would put us down in the orange section, but you always are in the more restrictive section. But I put this in here, and we can pull it up if we need to, if we are talking about a tiered target for return. We'll go quickly through the next slide. The challenge in presenting this is that the data comes out on Tuesday. So we will go on to the next slide. Is that in the most current data, that the adjusted case rate is 15.4. And that is down from 17.9 the previous week, but that still puts us in that moderate or purple range. And then the positivity rate has been decreasing each week. 2 weeks ago, it was 8.4%, went down to 6.5%, and now it's at 4.4%, which would put us in the moderate range. Next slide. So I return to our priorities in our return to school plan, and to me, these seem as relevant as when we discussed them on January 24th. And so this was the ideas of the trustees at that time, and that our highest priority is the safety of students, their families, and our staff. To the degree that we can do so safely, we want to have students on campus as much as possible. We will focus on the students who experience the largest gap in learning during distance learning. This includes students who receive special education services, our English learners, foster youth, or socioeconomically disadvantaged. And then we want to prioritize the social emotional health of our students, their families, and our staff. Next slide, please. So one of the questions that we will ask you to, when it comes time to discuss, is when will we return to school? So the decision should be based on public health data and our ability to meet the requirements of safety, testing, and availability of contact tracing. And so questions that we will put in front of you is, do we wait until educators have had access to the vaccine? Or do we pick a tiered assignment, for example, when we return in orange? So we won't discuss that mid-presentation, but that's what we will ask later in the discussion. Next slide. So there is, as of July 17th, as of January 14th, there was new guidance from the California Department of Public Health. It was a consolidation of previous guidance that were in multiple documents, but there were a few more requirements. One is that every 2 weeks we report on Monday. I report to the state where we are as a district in school opening. Are any of your schools open fully? Are any of your schools open in hybrid? Or are you providing services in a cohort, using the cohort guidance, which would be the learning hubs? And so I just reported that last Monday, and we do have learning hubs. So every 2 weeks I will need to report that. A few other things that, as I've read in the guidance, that have changed and have changed some of the suggestions that we've made as we were developing our plans is initially we were disinfecting everything. Everything was going to be disinfected several times each day. Every classroom would be disinfected, which would be predominantly fogging with a fogger that holds disinfectant. And at this time, it is recommended that the disinfecting happens only as a response to a positive case. They're finding that places where there is a lot of the disinfectant is that there are some students are responding with some skin conditions and that it's causing other health issues. So that was a big change. The other is around student testing. And there is not a requirement for surveillance testing for students, so ongoing testing for students. But as I read it and understand it, I believe that there is a requirement around response testing. So if a student if a student in a classroom is positive, any close contacts, not necessarily all students in that room, but any close contacts would be offered what is called response testing. And I'll speak to that a little bit more. So those are the two biggest pieces that come out of that. Next slide, please. So we have had an active return to school task force and been working since October. I'm going to talk about some of the information that they shared with at our most recent meeting, but the pieces that I feel like the task force does very well is when we get into school site planning, very specific plans for the school site around how the work is going to get done. And then when we have discussions around how can we take that next step or how can we solve that problem? And from this task force, Coincidentally, we have our parent leaders. So we have a number of parents that work in other school districts, and it's been interesting to learn how that's going for them. Hillsborough is one of the districts that's represented that's been open for a long time. And so when we talk about incremental steps, parents are able to offer some suggestions for how we can move forward. So after if there should be an approval of the plan, our future meetings, what we would like to work on is developing those site preparations, which we've made great progress on, and we'll continue to implement those, but developing the training and communication materials for students and families that are for example, IBL Bulldog specific. So that's some of the next steps that we will take. I just want to highlight the work that we completed in January, which was implementing the employee health screening and temperature checking. There were just a very few bumps in the road on that one, and that goes on quickly. In January, we had employee training for all employees on health and safety procedures to keep employees safe, and that was a big piece. We also have developed a COVID supplement to our injury illness prevention plan, and the training was based on some of the elements in there. We are now doing surveillance employee COVID testing for all employees that are reporting regularly to work. So most employees are tested every 2 weeks, with employees that are in more vulnerable jobs or working across sites, we ask them to be tested once a week. So now our work is around beginning the learning hubs, and we're getting started on that, and then preparing for hybrid learning. As you know, last time we met, we were very hopeful for the vaccine and hoping that it was coming sooner. But it does really represent a turn in the road in terms of safety. And it's not the only mitigation that we have against COVID, but for teachers and staff, it's a very, very important one. Next slide. So if we think about our incremental approach to returning, is that we have been in distance learning since last March. We began this school year by doing some student special education assessments in person. That is one service provider and one student under very tight protocols. We are just now getting started on learning hubs. I believe that Ortega, actually Valimar started a learning hub on Monday. Ortega started one last week. I was at Sunset Ridge today and got to see the setups for their learning hubs. I believe they are starting their 4th learning hub, and learning hubs are 5 students. You know, they're not a lot of students, but it's really looking for the students that are not having success, that are not being able to connect with school and not consistently attending. And what we have found, and this actually came from a parent in the learning hub, is that it's a great place to see what works, how your protocols work, how your temperature checking works, and be able to make any adjustments that we want on that. So our next step is to look at a plan for hybrid learning. And we have to do hybrid learning because one of the things that will come up in the plan is around making sure that there's a lot of physical distance. And so in 24 to 32 students in a classroom, we can't fit them all in and have 6 feet worth of distance. And so there has to be some kind of hybrid in terms of returning. And that will eventually return to school. So, you know, people often ask, well, what does next year look like? And that's really a little bit overwhelming to think about when we're just still in this year, trying to think about that. I would expect that most adults at that point would have the opportunity to be vaccinated. Parents, grandparents, any teaching staff. And so most adults would be vaccinated, but most students wouldn't be vaccinated. And so I do expect that even following most adult vaccinations, we'll continue to wear masks. And depending on what the guidance continues, that their return to school could be in a slightly adjusted way, or it could be in hybrid, but it still will have some elements of a pandemic response to it. So I'm going to hand it over to Will Lucy to discuss in general the details of hybrid learning. And I just want to recognize, and will say this as well, that any of the schedules on this are really, for example, they are not the plans that we are going to use, that each school will have a slightly adjusted schedule, but it will be for the minimum day minutes. So typically a kindergarten teacher or a kindergarten student is 180 minutes. And so the student would be at school for 180 minutes during the portion that they're in here. So I will ask Will to present the hybrid learning plan.
All right, yeah, thank you. And as Heather was saying, that this is kind of the base of a plan. So obviously a lot of this, what's going to be explained, is going to be something that all the schools will have to adapt to or be able to work off of. So first of all, the kind of the overview of it, right? By doing a hybrid learning plan, you're really requiring students to learn both in school as well as at home. And hybrid learning permits us to return to in-person learning by providing space for physical distancing and stable groups. The in-person part of it, it's essential that those students engage in rigorous instruction. And then the at-home learning the planning is a really big piece of it, that they're planning meaningful activities and we're truly partnering with the families and the students so that they feel supported and engaged in those activities on a daily basis. The hybrid learning schedule, and this is how it will work as far as the in-person and the at home. There'll be students will be divided into two groups, a group A and a group B, and group A will be in person on Mondays and Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, there'll be at-home learning. And Group B will have the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at-home learning, and the Thursday and Friday will be in-person learning. The schedules for the 2 days of in-person learning for kindergartners, their minimum instructional minutes daily is 180. So they'll have basically 3 60-minute learning blocks with breaks in between. Now, again, I want to reiterate this idea that this is a basis of a plan. Each school will have to will look at this and be able to make some adjustments that work for their school and their students and their population. But basically you'll have like an English language arts will be from 8:30 to 9:30, and then there'll be a recess from 9:30 to 9:50. And then the math will be for an hour after that. And then the science and social studies will be from 10:50 to 11:30. And that's for kindergarten. And that's, again, the minimum of the in-person instructional day. For the first, second, and third grade, it's 230 minutes daily. And so their blocks are more like 75 minutes of learning blocks with breaks in between. And again, I can't keep reiterating this. There will also be some breaks within the 75-minute break. It's just dependent on how the school will implement this. But again, the basic idea is having these 3 75-minute blocks, and with a recess between the first block and the second block, and then their dismissal time would be at 12:30. The 4th and 5th grade, it's actually 4th through 8th grade. Their minimum instructional minutes is 240. So the idea there is to have 3 80-minute learning blocks with breaks in between, and their start time may be at 8:30, maybe a staggered start depending how far we are in with our in person. You know, how many grades are actually starting to be in person. There may be some staggered starting there, but if they start at 8:30, then their dismissal time would be at 12:50, and again there would be a recess of 20 minutes there in between the first and the second period. And then the 6th through 8th sample schedule for a 2-day in-person is going to be a little bit different. And again, there'll probably be some differences from school to school. But again, this is kind of a basis of it, where they will have 3 periods on their first day, and the second day they'll have 3 more periods, and then there'll be passing periods in between. Within the plan, we have a 4-minute passing period that might, change from school to school, or even from grade level, from a grade level to a grade level, depending on the physical location of the classes and so on, and making sure that we're being able to provide the safety to get students from one period to the next period. Their dismissal times would be around, if they started at 8:45, and 8:45 would be arrival and a kind of a screening period. And then the dismissal would be at 1:15. These are 80-minute learning blocks. So they're larger learning blocks, larger periods, and then passing breaks in between. Our comprehensive middle school, Ingrid B. Lacey, may have an alternate schedule. There has been talk about having actually all 6 periods on one day. But again, we would have to really work on something that would work for their school and, again, their physical campus, and how we could it could be safe between students going into various different classrooms. So those all have to be considered. But again, this is an idea of a base schedule, having 3 periods one day and 3 periods the next day. And then the at-home learning guidelines, and this again would be 3 days a week. And the idea is, again, to provide those 3 to 4 hours of learning daily. Again, at least at the minimum, the 180 minutes for kindergarten, 230 for 1st through 3rd, and 240 for grades 4 through 8. The at-home learning guidelines would include some common and consistent routines and procedures, making sure that those procedures that they have within those 2 in-person days carry on into the 3 days, the other days of the week. And it's vital that the students are provided learning supports that guide the students at home. The use of learning software. The plan has many different types of learning software that can be utilized to continue that learning that happens at school, to kind of springboard them into those at-home learning practices and lessons. So that learning software is important. And then the idea of clearly defining expectations, supports, and resources for the at-home learning. And this gets to the point of students up to now have been learning 5 days a week at home. So there is going to be some transition time where there's going to be really a lot of time spent on the more of the social emotional support and the routines and the expectations. It's going to be a different way of instruction from a 100% distance learning environment. And then I think I'm going to hand it back over to you, Heather.
Sure, I'm happy to take that. So in terms of our plan to return to instruction, there's a California Department of Public Health checklist, and it comes almost right in this order. So that's how I will get started. If I can have the next slide. So stable groups is approximately half the class. It doesn't matter so much the size of the group as the stability of the group. And so initially, as last summer when we were working on plans, there was a lot of talk about a bubble cohort where the group would stay completely together. This is more stable groups, and so it's approximately half the class, that the students stay together throughout the day. They won't mix with other classes. which is different than the way most of our schools function. Most of our schools function, they share kids or they share teachers. And so that is a change. This group of students, the A group of a teacher will have recess together. They would eat snack together, and that they would be assigned to a specific bathroom. So obviously they would say, in the A wing, you're going to use this bathroom. And one of the reasons why you are so specific about the groups and about the spaces that they use is around contact tracing. So, and then, and just to point out with the comprehensive middle school schedule, one of the hardest pieces is around a stable group. A comprehensive school schedule is typically built so that kids have interaction with many different kinds of kids, and that we are going to look at the schools that are in person and how they are doing that. But that is as many high schools will not open. That's one of the reasons, is just not finding a way to translate that into stable groups. So in terms of arriving and dismissal, Will presented kind of possible schedules, but what we're going to find is that any given schedule, that the grade levels are going to be staggered. So now where we all, in a real life where we all started at 8:30 and everyone gathered together and came in at the same time, this is going to be more straggling in. And as kids get out of the car, they will have their temperature taken and then they walk into the classroom. So we are going to, as much as possible, use the outdoor entrance as opposed to walking through the hallways to get into the schools. So movement within the schools will be directed. You're going to walk on one side of the hallway and walk the other way, and that certain doors will be used by certain classrooms. So next, face coverings are very, very important. And as you know, this summer, students beyond age 5 needed to wear them, and we said all students will wear them. There are exceptions. Let's be honest, in almost everything in here, there are exceptions because there are some students who are not able to wear a mask. But students and staff will wear face coverings with those very specific exemptions. And then in classrooms or settings where students are not able to mask, or there's additional exposure through body fluids, we will have additional PPE for both the staff and the students. Health screening. So as I said, we initiated the health screenings at the district office in December as a practice and then rolled out to the school site. And this is only for staff that are reporting to school regularly. Everyone fills out basically a 5 question survey that asks about any kind of symptoms or exposure to COVID. And then as they report to school, they get their temperature checked. And families will complete the symptom screener at home, either digitally or just using a paper version. And what we've been told in the way that we understand this is that it's really the family and each person, and I know that as I fill it out, is just giving yourself a reminder about, am I feeling any of these things? Are there any possible symptoms that I may be having? And then the temperature check will take place at school. Next screen. So what we, as I mentioned before around the vaccine, is that we really look at this as multiple layers of safety. And so you've seen this presented through San Mateo County Office of Ed as the 4 pillars, but stable groups and limited gatherings. We will continue to hold both staff meetings and parent meetings virtually. Our biggest groups will be our classes or our hybrid stable groups. Face coverings, physical distancing of 6 feet, adequate ventilation, hand hygiene, which includes both hand washing for 20 seconds using soap and water, and hand sanitizer when that's not available. We talked about the symptoms screening and close contact exposure screening, and then the surveillance testing for staff. So one of the questions that a lot of people have is around cleaning and air quality. And so I talked about the difference between disinfection and cleaning, and there has been a shift in that. Cleaning is still very, very important, and wiping down any high frequency, high touch areas is also important. Doorknobs, sinks, other kinds of things. So we have hired additional custodians during the day to frequently clean the high touch surfaces and sinks. We did not think that there that it would be something that the daytime custodian could do on their own. We are in the process of that. I think our goal was to get up to 7. And I don't want to overspeak, but I know that we've hired 3. There may be a 4th one in process. So those jobs continue to stay open, and they're good jobs. And so we hope that people will consider taking them. So those, as Nicole Sayer said, is that CSEA employees play a really important role in the health and safety of our students and have been essential workers since the beginning of this pandemic. And so that's where we felt like additional custodians would be important. We want to make sure that there's soap available for hand washing, hand sanitizer. There is going to be a method for communication around completion of cleaning in classrooms and common areas. And so somebody might say, why don't you just have a checklist? And again, that's where we have said that each school site will have a method of communicating that. Some want to do it digitally. Some want to have a little Post-it note. Some want to have a checklist. But as long as it's being communicated, so that if I'm the teacher in that room, I can see that these things were done at this time and when it was done. So the windows and doors will remain open, and that we have MERV 13 filters in our HVAC units, and that those are changed every 4 months. One of the challenges is going to be ventilation recommendations around poor air quality and days. And so one of the things that in developing the comprehensive school safety plans, we did outline some steps that we would take during poor air quality days around COVID, and that that may be a time where school would be it would be learn from home day if their air was very poor quality, because typically with poor quality air days is you want that HVAC system to be running internal air, so within the building, so that it can go through the system. Well, with COVID, you don't want that. And so COVID is worse than poor air quality. So we would, again, keep the windows open, but we may be in that situation more likely to send students home in that situation. So we'll outline that for parents. I think that's it for air quality. So when we talk about a return to school, is just making sure that everyone understands what the processes and procedures are. We did talk at length we talked about the January Professional Development Day, where all staff learned about COVID and how COVID is spread and the mitigation methods that we were taking. I think a lot of people heard things that they already knew, but staff did say that they learned things, or that they're thinking about things differently. Part of working and living in a community is that not all people will see things in the same way. And so putting into place processes so that people can speak up when they're not feeling safe, or ask their coworkers to do something differently. So that's an important piece. So we did that on a Zoom, and then each school went back to their school site and did that. As we prepare to return to school, that the training would take place in staff meetings and either through virtual or online education regarding school-specific safety protocols. Prior to learning, custodians will participate in additional safety training. It's time to do another session of that. Information will also be sent to parents from school site and district level communications regarding the protocols and procedures to ensure safety. And then just as a additional layer of where that information could be found is that those will be posted on the district and school websites. So overall, our goal here is that students would be welcomed back to campus in a measured sequential approach. We want to make sure that the training for families and students will take place virtually prior to returning to school, and that students, as they arrive onto campus, would be trained in safety protocols as they return to the classroom. So we want to make sure that that information is out there. I know from many of the parents that I've heard from, they will do almost anything that is being asked, and they really are very interested in supporting student safety in terms of returning to school. So we just want it to be well known what those things are. Next slide, please. So in terms of COVID-19 testing, I talked about how we are currently doing that at the district office and on school campuses, and that folks that work across multiple schools within a week, we ask them to test more frequently. In response to a positive test is we would offer testing to asymptomatic close contacts, so anyone that's been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. Individuals that are symptomatic should be tested in a healthcare setting. That's not something that we should take into account. You know, just all of the surveys that people take and all of the training that we will give to families, just like we say to adults, if you don't feel well, stay home. Don't come to campus. Initially we had a couple times where people would come to school and say, I just wanted to tell you I didn't feel well. And it's like, nope, don't do that. Call us. We want symptomatic people to be at home. And if they need to be tested, they should be tested in a healthcare setting. We do need to establish a pathway for that response testing, or if a student is exposed in a classroom or in a school setting, we need to establish that pathway. Curative is one, but the state also has a new vendor that we could consider as well. Identification and contact tracing, this is something people are very interested in. And so the most important point is that if an individual is positive or a close contact, so whether they're a student or an employee, it absolutely must be reported. So employees report to their supervisor immediately calls HR. In terms of a student, the family member would immediately get in touch with the school principal, and the school principal will take care of it from there. So we absolutely need parents to know that this is going to be a working relationship where you're not just, it's not just the health and safety of your student, is what we bring to school affects the health and safety of all students as well as staff. And so that's where we need to work together to make sure that we're vigilant about those things. So in the case of a positive case or a close contact, the staff and student stays at home. In terms of the student, the principal would report to the San Mateo Health Office, but they would also work with the district office in terms of making sure that we know what's going on at the school site. And then we determine the individuals who are close contacts and we notify them. Close contacts stay home and quarantine for 10 days and monitor the symptoms, and then test after 5 to 7 days when they could be positive. And so that's in response to being a close contact. Let's see. I think that's all I want to say at this point. Right now, actually, if you could go back for just a second. Right now, when we have probably about half our staff reporting to work regularly, is that those close contacts are being notified by phone, and that if there is a positive case while that individual has been on campus, there's a notification that goes out to the whole campus or anyone that's on the campus. And so what we will do is that if there's a positive case at the school, we will notify parents at that school. I will tell you now, as I will tell you then, we will not tell you who it is. No matter how much people want to know who it is, people have rights to privacy. and we will not share that information. And but we will share whether there's a positive case at the school. Next question. Our next slide. So this is just a graphic of how that reporting of cases go. Is staff reports to the supervisor, who reports to HR. Families would report a positive case or close contact to the school principal. The school principal will be in touch with, there'll be the direct link to San Mateo County Health, but will also communicate with the director of HR. And that I would be looped in because I would be the one that would communicate with the San Mateo County Office of Education. So it's multiple tiers. And right now, Alexis O'Flaherty in HR is our primary contact with San Mateo County Health. And she communicates with them regularly. Next slide. So communication with families regarding a positive case is that, so most important thing is that if there is a positive case is you determine those individuals who would be considered close contacts. And so making sure that we notify them, like I said, that we are currently doing that with phone calls directly to staff. Close contacts stay home and quarantine for 10 days and monitor their symptoms. Through response testing, we could test them. Just because you are a close contact does not require that you be tested, but it's another level of safety on that end. And so then we would notify the staff and parents of the school site if the positive case was at the school, and that we would communicate that via a school messenger, and it would be it could be a phone call, it could be a text, or it could be an email to parents. But again, that personally identifiable information on the positive case will not be shared. So here's where we are, is we are making progress on many of these things, but there are still many things to be done. So like I said, like I mentioned, is that those numbers are going down. They're going down quickly, but we'll continue to watch out local data. I talked about the variant. That is a concern of many people around would that increase the number of our cases. Our continued collaboration and negotiations with LSEA and CSEA. We have settled with CSEA around a return to school, and we are hopeful for settling or coming to an agreement with LSEA very soon. So the next question is surveying parents, is how will we get the information around who's interested in returning? We are going to deliver a panorama survey, and the question is, are parents comfortable returning to school after educators receive the vaccine? I am not certain. I think we may be offering an additional survey as it becomes more clear what our timeline is around interest in returning to school, and gathering some further information. So it probably will be 2 surveys to gather that information from parents. So we need to do some more work on the 6th through 8th grade solutions, just for a few reasons. But again, it mostly comes down to that stable group. I don't think it's impossible to solve. I also think if we look at a return to school that's focused on social emotional learning, perhaps it isn't. Maybe there might be distance learning in the morning and something in the afternoon, but something that brings kids on campus to make connections with others. I don't know that there's an easy answer, but I think it's certainly a solvable problem. Site implementation, development of training materials will be our next steps following the approval of this plan. I need to work on the setting up the response testing for students. And then we do need to develop redundancies in our staff training. So right now at each site, there's one person that oversees the curative testing. One of the things that happens in the pandemic is people need to quarantine at home, or they are sick and not able to be here. So we need a few people to do a couple of jobs. We will need to develop our muscles on contact tracing. Principals attended a training, but it was in, I think, October, November, and so much has changed, and we've been through so much at that point. So just making sure that we have several people that can do the important jobs that are going to keep us all safe. Next slide. So considerations in terms of longer term is that what will school look like next year? And so what will it look in August? I do think, just as many, many people feel like their children thrive in full year distance learning. So if we do offer that, what would that look like, and how do we do that? We will need to address that as a board as we look at our intra-district enrollment, because we made some one-year only changes to that. So we will need to look at those in the next meeting or two. And then determine when is that right time to ask people if they're in, I called it full year distance learning. When is that right time to ask? Because if we ask too early, things may change successfully. If we ask too late, we may not be able to provide the appropriate staffing. So typically we want to make sure that that staff have an assignment by the beginning of June. And so that's kind of the piece that we would want to get in place on that end. Next slide. So we have the opportunity to do an update from the task force, and I'll call on some task force members that may want to provide some input on that. So I talked about it our last meeting, where we talked about the incremental steps toward a return to in-person learning. And one of the challenges in this is that hybrid learning has many, many limitations, but it is an important next step in terms of us returning to school. So being able to talk about what hybrid is and what it looks like, but I just have to be honest, we have to do it as providing physical distancing of 6 feet at this point. So then what will the return to school look like? One of the steps was prepare the instructions and the videos for students and families on what is expected of them coming back. We will need parents and students to be vigilant about safety, and they're an important piece of that. And so how do we help them understand what to do? As much parent communication as possible, up-to-date news as well. Talking about the difference between asynchronous and in-person learning, and what does that exactly mean for parents? Again, much of that discussion happened this summer when we were talking about it, and then we went to distance learning and lost that a little bit. People see the trade-offs that go along with that, and so, but it's an important part of the incremental next steps. One of the things is that we hear from parents in the task force say, gosh, I don't know if I want to go back in hybrid, because 3 days without, teachers and contacts and without being connected to the class. And so that's where when Will talked about having a common routine, is there a way that there can be someone that checks in with them, or, having a open session where kids can come on and ask questions, and maybe it might not be with their classroom teacher, but it would be with a supportive adult. Or the other one was, is it possible that students at home and students at school could start together in kind of a common circle? So those are some problem solving that were discussed in that. And then the other feedback that we heard were that learning hubs are a great start to kind of that incremental piece of getting started. So with that being said, we do have 2 people from the task force that are interested in giving their point of view. And so representing LSEA, Rachel Merlot.
Dr. Olson, I think you unmuted me, John.
Okay, how about, okay, not Rachel Merlot. There, Jonathan, if you can just stand there, we'll mute you, and Rachel is on. Let's see if we can hear from Rachel. Rachel?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can, perfect.
Okay, great. All right, well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share out regarding the task force. We have been meeting regularly regarding bringing students back for in-person learning. While a lot of progress has been made on the general district plan and the specific site plans regarding cleaning, safety, and process, there are still a number of unanswered questions and some areas that need to be addressed to move forward. Many of these questions that we continue to have are a lot of the same ones that we've had since the July summertime meetings. One important step needed to move forward would be a specific timeline. This has been brought up in the task force for a number of months. This is important so that there is a uniform message and process at each site across the district for when things need to be done. For an example, classroom setup, a specific date as to when rooms will be checked that they meet all the requirements for returning to in-person learning and having the appropriate items needed to do that in a socially distanced, adequate manner. There have been a number of requests for the district to survey our families. This has been said time and time again. We need this information to move forward with our next steps, such as schedules. How many parents would really send their children back this year? Is there more of a demand for middle school students versus elementary students? We hope that by getting a robust survey, and results from our families, that this will help to continue the forward progress. The previous survey that was given to families was really incomplete, and when you really look at the numbers, it only represents a really small percentage of our over 3,000 students. This information does seem to drive a lot of the decisions our district is making, and that is concerning when it's such a small snapshot. We do know that the district plans to send a second survey out through Panorama. We feel like it might be more successful if it came directly from the school district. There were many unresolved issues with the Panorama survey previously conducted. We also feel the families would be more inclined to answer a survey directly from the Pacifica School District related to return to school rather than Panorama. We appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this process, and we're happy to clarify and answer any questions or to kind of give any more feedback. I did want to just say one final thing too. I am on the task force as LSCA for IBL for Ingrid B. Lacey. And I do feel that when we are meeting in our specific school sites, I do feel that it's at times a little bit more productive because we all know exactly what's going on at our school site. So I do appreciate that time for us to be at our school site looking at how it would really work when we're there. So that's what I have to share.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
How about Jonathan Harris?
Okay. Hi, thank you. I would just like to start, actually, well, I should say who I am. My name is Jonathan Harris. I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher at Ocean Shore School, as well as being the chair of the LSEA negotiating team and also a parent at Ocean Shore. I want to express my gratitude to the board for starting the task force. I'm speaking tonight as a member of it. And I just want to say that it really did allow for a more thoughtful, inclusive community approach to to coming up with a safety plan. I am really grateful that the board has been considering caution, and that they've also had some thoughtful discussions about looking towards having all staff be vaccinated potentially before starting back. And as a negotiator, I know that that is something that is a keen desire from our membership. It's been really wonderful that the board has been taking consideration about our community and the funding that our district has. When looking at the districts that are open now, I look at Hillsborough and Menlo Park that have considerable 3, 4, 5 times the per pupil funding that we have. They can hire more staff and it can be more safe. And as much as we all want to be open, those really do become factors that are important to opening. Our community, unlike Hillsborough and Menlo Park, have a lot more essential workers. They have a lot more families and households that are multi-generational and multi-family, and we could have just a very devastating effect on our families as teachers, but also in our communities and our students. That, becoming exposed to COVID, let alone contracting COVID, could be devastating. And your caution is really considerate and appropriate, and I thank you for that. I would like to say that I really think the task force has come up with a solid plan. The safety plan is really something I feel comfortable with, and I appreciate that. I do have a slight concern with some of the ventilation systems. I think the plan is excellent with how it discusses the ventilation systems as far as wanting to have MERV 13 and the HVAC systems. I do question if all of the school sites have that. I have heard for years that at Ocean Shore that we do need to keep the doors and windows closed for that ventilation system to work properly. And I hope and trust that the district will look into that before we open. And again, trust has been a big part of having the task force. I also want to talk about the importance of surveying the community to find out the numbers that we have. I just heard in the news actually that a vocal minority can bully a board into opening prematurely. And I had heard that in the San Ramon Valley district today, they opened school for in-person instruction, but only had 30% of their community that wanted in-person instruction. I know also in San Carlos, for example, they plan to open in February 22nd, but only half of them want to return. And I think of the devastation to trying to keep a cohesive classroom community and staffing. That would just be a nightmare if we had that kind of situation, and your cautious approach really does help with that. My last thing I would just like to say is the instructional plan, as Dr. Olson had said, is something that we'll be working on for quite some time, and I appreciate that comment about it. I do have quite a few concerns about it as a negotiator, as a teacher, and as a parent. One of the guiding questions in it is, what are the essential expectations that leaders and teachers need to agree upon and execute when planning and facilitating learning? And I just like to say with that question, it does beg a question. First of all, it says that leaders and teachers, and I hope that it's taken under consideration that we change the language there. It's assuming that teachers are not leaders, and I don't think that's the intent, but I hope that's changed. But I also would like to say that with this, LSEA has not really been consulted with this plan, and there are a number of problems with it, especially the schedules that were presented tonight. While they were presented as not firm and definitely fluid and dynamic ideas, they will not work at any of the sites. So there really does need to be agreed upon components of this plan before it can move forward. And I look forward to working with the district. We have built trust in the last few months in coming up with the safety plan. I really hope that we can negotiate a lot of the parts of the instructional plan and come to an agreement. And I think that's pretty much it. I really do hope that if you have questions that you ask, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Heather, you're muted.
I don't see anyone else on the task force, and I didn't speak to anybody around. I did talk to Nicole Sayers, and her comments were at the beginning. So at this point, that brings us to discussion and action. We are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We couldn't hear you, Elizabeth.
Dr. Olson, are we going to go to public comment first before we go to discussion and action?
Why, thank you. That absolutely is the case. Okay, so
I think that would be Ilya.
Ilya's next, yep. Perfect. And so there are quite a few public speakers. So what we would ask is that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. And for folks that are not regular part of the board, is that we do not respond directly to any questions that you answer. You can ask them and we can get you answers on them, but just as a part of this is a meeting of the board held in public. And so I noticed that some people are putting questions in the question and answer, and feel free to get those questions to us, and they may be a part of the discussion. It's very likely that if you have the questions, other people may have them as well. But I just don't want to disappoint you with the expectation that you would be receiving an answer to the questions that you ask. So now for a frequent speaker, Mr. Ilya Varnev.
Hello, my name is Ilya Varnayev. I really do appreciate this opportunity, so thank you very much. I'm speaking to you tonight from my perspective as a kindergarten teacher at Sunset Ridge Elementary. Throughout the pandemic, as informations and conditions have changed, one thing has really remained consistent. Our Pacifica school board members have always put safety first. I'm really proud of this. My message to you this evening is, please stay the course. We are so close. Teachers are next in line to receive the vaccine. Granted, getting the vaccine to every teacher may take some time. However, waiting for teachers to get the vaccine is not a binary choice. In other words, it's not all or nothing. Right now, we're talking about just some teachers returning, so not every single teacher. Realistically, we're talking about teachers with students who are struggling the most with online learning, younger grades, TK through second grade, those with special needs. I really do urge the board to commit to keeping those teachers that are asked to return and, by extension, our loved ones safe. By the time all the other grades return to school, the landscape around the vaccine is going to look very different. In the meantime, if you do ask a specific group of teachers to return, please commit to having that group of teachers vaccinated first. In the long run, your community will thank you. Our safety and that of our loved ones is in your hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anna Harris.
Yep, Ms. Harris.
Yes, thank you. I am speaking tonight as the exhausted parent of a first grader in the district. I'm also speaking as the spouse of a Pacifica teacher and as a kindergarten teacher in a different district that has been in-person hybrid learning since November 30th. I just want to thank the district and the board for taking a measured approach to reopening, one built on science and trust, as trust is key to making any reopening plan work. I can tell you from experience that teaching in person has been fraught with anxiety and stress as we try to maintain vigilance and keeping our students and their families safe in a district that has not taken the time to build trust with its teachers or keep its commitments to safety that we mutually agreed upon in our memorandum of understanding. We've had sick teachers and sick students, and we've had multiple positive cases, including in-school transmission. Every week, we wait to find out which staff member or class needs to be quarantined, while our hardworking, stressed out principals try to figure out staffing to pick up the slack while also doing contact tracing and then the other jobs that principals actually do in a non-pandemic year. I am here to tell you that teaching in person during a pandemic is not for the faint of heart, and I'm hopeful that Pacifica will continue to maintain transparency and build trust this year so that my own daughter and husband can have as safe and successful a return to school as possible when the time is right. If after reopening, the teachers and families of Pacifica bring up concerns about safety, please continue to listen to them. And finally, thank you for making sure that my husband and his beloved colleagues who have been through so much this year will have a vaccine and a safe workplace before returning, and for making sure that my daughter will have a safe classroom before she returns, as this helps to keep both our community and the one that I teach in safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I think next we have Erin Pickett.
Yes, hi, can you hear me? Good, thank you. I would just like to start off. I am a mom of 2 boys at Cabrillo, and the teachers are amazing. They have literally been above and beyond for our children. So this isn't in no way is a comment about our amazing teachers. I would like to say that the CDC has publicly stated that it is safe to return to school with proper precautions, temperature taking, sanitizing, social distancing, hybrid schedules. Our own local Boys and Girls Club back in the Valley has been operating for about 10 months for childcare. With all of these safety precautions in place, there has only been 1 scare in 10 months, and there was no outbreak. So I do believe that there is an opportunity to get our children back into the school in a hybrid schedule safely for everyone before vaccinations take place. I was a therapist at Ortega Elementary for 3 years. And I know that this is a paramount time for our children's brains. Their neurophysiology right now is at its peak. And what should be casting a wide net of the information that they are to absorb right now in the classroom has now been turned into a butterfly net. They are behind a computer and they are deteriorating. And this makes me so sad. What our teachers could give to our children in the classroom is so much more than what they're receiving right now. We owe it to our children, our families, and our community to at least try the hybrid model. Let's give it a shot, and let's see if we can get the children back into our classrooms where they so desperately want to be. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. I think next we have Linda Benares.
Before Ms. Benares, before we start her time, one of the things that I'm noticing is over on the right-hand side, we have some attendees with their hands up. And if you are interested in making public comment, what we would ask is that you move over to the question and answer section and just type your name in, and so that you would be called in that order. And then just as a reminder is that the question and answer is not a place for either communication or putting question and answers. It's only for lining up for public comment. So if you want to speak and have your hand raised, please come on over to the question and answer. Thanks, Ms. Benares.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Linda Benares, and I'm a parent of a child with an individualized education program, or IEP, who receives both general education and special day class, or SDC, services at Ortega. I would like to comment on 2 components of the plan for return to in-person learning, both found on the special population section on page 5. Firstly, I'd like to affirm and express appreciation for the flexibility given to how one-to-one IEP services provided by specialists such as speech, OT, behavior, and counseling can be provided, allowing them to work with students from different cohorts. I strongly believe in-person and push-in approaches into the students' natural learning environments must continue to be an option for our students. Lastly, I would like to express deep concern with language regarding students in special day class, or SDC, settings. Quote from page 5, students in the special day class settings will maintain their own stable groups. Inclusion opportunities for SDC students will be coordinated virtually between the SDC teachers and general education teachers at sites. To mitigate cross-contamination of groups, end quote. While I understand the safety reasoning to limit participation of each child to only one stable cohort, the determination of which stable cohort, general education versus SDC, the student is physically assigned to should be an individualized decision agreed upon within the student's IEP team. And this position, I believe, is very clearly supported by the Office of Special Education Programs, which is within the United States Department of Education's Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. I've referenced statements from this federal office in a letter I submitted to our Board of Trustees. In conclusion, I recommend removing the aforementioned text quoted from page 5 of the Special Population section of the proposed plan and replacing it with the following text that aligns with the IDEA requirements and supports the educational rights of our students with disabilities. I recommend, quote, IEP teams will make individualized decisions on how to provide special education and related services to students with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Michelle Dion. Do we have Michelle?
There are about 182 people, so she's got to dig through the Michelles.
I'm there. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, my name is Michelle Dion. My children are students at Ocean Shore School. First, I wanted to thank the board, Dr. Olson, and the Return to School Task Force for their continued support of returning to in-person learning when it's safe to do so. Dr. Olson's recent email indicated the plan is to reopen schools shortly after educators have had an opportunity to receive both doses of the vaccine, and I'm asking the board to support that plan. I want to stress that I am empathetic towards families who are struggling in distant learning. I too have struggles and concerns. However, I do not believe those struggles and concerns should be weighed against the health and safety of the overall community. I'm speaking tonight because I am extremely concerned about how political the concept of returning to in-person has become. Our teachers are not disposable or expendable. They are not babysitters, nor are they social workers responsible for mental health. They are educators. And yet this silly notion is being floated that teachers are expected to fill these multiple roles. And if teachers are expected to fill these roles, why does the education system lack the proper funding? The pandemic has opened everyone's eyes to the disparities of private versus public education, and public education in affluent areas versus a less affluent area. The pandemic has shown society what teachers have been arguing for generations. There is a lack of serious funding within the education system. I am left befuddled at this concept of pushing so hard for a return before it's safe in something that will no way appear normal. After the novelty wears off, the frustration of having less class time with the teachers will prove exhausting. Additionally, the strain on teachers to come up with 2 different lesson plans and trying to be present for the in-person students while being available for the distant learning students, on top of the stress of needing to stay hyper vigilant for safety, not just for themselves, but also for the students, is unrealistic. I also want to point out the CDC guidelines are being taken out of context. To be clear, the CDC did not say schools could just open safely. They said the evidence shows that it can be done safely without vaccines if the environment is where it needs to be. Specifically, proper mitigation measures must be in place for a safe return. CDC is stating that universal masking needs to be in place. That would mean all individuals, including students, properly wearing their masks at all times. The ability to spread students out is not viable given the current setup of most of our classrooms to accommodate even half of the teachers assigned students. Ensuring proper ventilation, let's be realistic. Our schools in our district do not have the upgraded proper ventilation systems. Look at what happened to Ocean Shore last spring. It was not there. Many of the windows throughout the schools do not open fully, and that is in response to active shooter precautions. Initially, when I wrote to the board members at the beginning of the week, I was of the opinion that we should wait to do in-person learning until teachers and staff were vaccinated. However, after reading the return to in-person plan in full, I'm left with the strong belief we should focus on a fall return to in-person. By fall, our teachers and our at-risk family members should be vaccinated, which will minimize the risk of spread to the community. While the current distant learning plan that has been in place for approximately 6 months might not be ideal for all students, neither is relearning the new system laid out in the in-person plan with only 2 to 3 months left of this school year. I truly wish I saw these same parents who are coming out in force pushing for a return to in-person learning, showing up to support our teachers when their benefits are being threatened and they cannot get a pay increase. I'm going to end with the sentence I have repeated to my 2 children for nearly a year now. You are not stuck at home. You are safe at home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Lance Walter.
Hi, my name is Lance Walter. I have 2 daughters in school at Valleymar, and I wanted to join the meeting. I, like many, I think, were elated to hear the news from the CDC that thousands of schools across the country have reopened safely with careful and adequate precautions. And I'm optimistic that we can follow their lead and reopen safely when we're out of the purple tier. I'm not going to pretend to be a science expert. I'm just going to refer to the information provided in the materials for this meeting sourced from the CDC. I do want to quickly appreciate how much the teachers have tried to do for our students in this really difficult time. They're doing things that they were not hired or trained to do, dealing with technology issues, new platforms, kids in all different kinds of situations, and they have tried so hard to make it a good experience. It has not been from what I've seen, but not for any lack of effort from the teachers. I am hopeful that teachers, kids, and families like my own will get vaccinated in parallel, but the CDC has made it clear that that's not required to reopen safely if other precautions are taken. We will lose the entire school year if we make vaccinations a prerequisite. And I like the idea of surveys to inform some of the implementation details of reopening. But I think the state law about schools providing education don't depend on parent surveys, meaning that should inform implementation, but not whether we go back or when we go back. I don't envy this group in knowing that this is a very non-trivial problem, that certain teachers are going to need special accommodations. We don't want to put people at risk. But it's also clear from the Biden-Harris CDC that reopening is not just the best thing for our kids' continued education, it's the best thing for their overall health. It is now a health imperative for our kids that we reopen the schools. I think it's a chance for our teachers to be awesome advocates here. They could show our ability to consume and understand science, apply logic, manage risk safely, and lead our students back safely to in-person learning. And I'm also very interested in what else I can do as a parent to help support that process. My last request would be that you change the survey question that was mentioned about surveying parents feeling safe about kids returning to school after teachers are vaccinated. That will accidentally manufacture a misleading answer. That'll generate something like 90% of parents believe that students should go back after teachers are vaccinated, and that won't reflect parents who believe that students should go back while teachers get vaccinated in parallel. So we should survey for that. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Sophia Beclora.
Hello. Okay, you can hear me. My name is Zuhair. Sophia is actually my daughter, who is on Zoom, and so she's taken over my account. I'm the parent of a first grader at Ocean Shore. Thank you for listening to me for 3 minutes. I concur with all the other parents who have reported that their teachers are doing a great job. Sophia's teachers are doing a great job. The distance learning is hard. There's technology involved, and I'm really happy with the efforts and what's come out during this distance learning program. My perspective is not just as a first grade parent. I'm also the president of the board of a San Francisco preschool, a small nonprofit. And I can see that my younger child is thriving. She's going there. And my older child, Sophia, is suffering because while her schoolwork is great, she is really craving peer interaction every day. And she even wrote a little booklet that I have neglected to actually send to you, showing how sad she is that she can't see her friends and interact with peers. Reacting to what I saw in the plan today, from my perspective, we would happily take any form of hybrid learning over the distance learning. And being on Zoom for, 2 times 30 minutes a day does not make her feel connected to her peers. So, from our perspective, hybrid would be great. As in my role as the preschool board member, we had to make a tough decision of reopening in June 2020. Everybody wanted that to happen, and with safety modifications, I'm happy to report that where I am, there have been no problems. I'm a scientist by training. I'm convinced that when the majority of scientists says the evidence shows that classrooms do not become viral hotspots. That's something that would be great if we could listen to that. I would like to comment on a couple of things that I heard tonight, specifically that more well-funded school districts have opened. That, begs the questions, why haven't we? Clearly, the easy answer would be, well, they have more money, but I would like to know, what does that money buy? And, could we be specific about what we need to reopen? And maybe that could drive some fundraising efforts to get us there, if we all want to return to school. The second reaction is I saw that the written plan says reopen in the yellow tier. I heard that San Francisco would like to reopen in the orange tier, so that may be a little bit conservative. It's also possible that I misread that. And finally, my last comment, just hearing the prospect of not having a normal return to school in the 21-22 school year is making me quite sad. I really do hope that it doesn't come to that and that our vaccine efforts are faster. As requested, Dr. Olson stated from a very personal perspective, just so that you all have my voice. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Megan McKenna.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I had to find my unmute button. So I'm also a parent at Ocean Shore, like many of us who are here. I have 3 young girls who are lovers of school and lovers of education. I'm not lovers. And I do share the sadness that the first woman who spoke has of watching them deteriorate a little bit while they're in the butterfly net of distance learning, staring at computers. So our first semester was spent trying to reignite that joy with specific targeted approaches and just ignoring other subjects at the peril just to get that back. The idea of coming back to school as a hybrid learning is really exciting. And I think that it's something that the kids will definitely benefit from, not only mine, but I feel like this is a shared sentiment with many people. The teachers are doing a great job. I will reiterate that as well. So it has nothing to do with that. It's just the fact that you're sitting in front of a computer. My kids have been able to attend TTT on site at Ocean Shore with 12 other children for the past year. And I will say they're in one room. It's a pod. And they are doing fantastic there with hygiene and with safety. And there has been 0 issues with those 12 people throughout the year. So that's one item that helps me keep faith that we can be safe and ready to go back to school. I read through your plan, and I have to say I think it's very thoughtful, and you've really put a lot of work into that, and I do appreciate that as well. And the only other thing I would like to mention is that I heard earlier that the learning hubs were going on at many of the campuses, but we did get an email a few weeks ago that they were not occurring at Ocean Shore. And to clarify, not the TTT work, but there's learning hubs that could be available for kids that are struggling. And it sounded like it was because there was not enough staff for it. And I just wanted to mention this to the board, that maybe that's something you can consider so that our fellow students who would benefit from a learning hub could actually attend, specifically at Ocean Shore. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Prof. Dorsey.
Hi, my name is Karen Dorsey. So I'm a parent of 2 kindergartners and a 3rd grader at Valleymar. And I wanted to thank you all for your hard work. I'm also a high school teacher in a neighboring district. And I have seen the incredible work that all of the teachers have been doing to pull off the distance learning. I also want to thank the board for being cautious in our return to school. My family has grandparents in our house every day, and we would not have been comfortable with our children going back to school before our grandparents had their vaccines. I have serious concerns about going back to school in a hybrid system, less so in terms of the security. I am concerned about our teacher security and do think that they should have vaccines. But I'm also concerned about the children's actual learning when we go back to hybrid. We'll go from I've been very happy with the amount of actual interaction my kids have had with their teachers. And to go from that 5-day interaction to 2 days is worrying. I heard Dr. Olson, as she said, that this is not really our decision to make. So I do understand that, but I wanted to put it out there that there are parents concerned about this actual learning in school with the diminished amount of minutes that they will have available. I would also like to strongly advocate for structures on those 3 days that they will not have in-person learning. I heard earlier in the day, and I was happy to hear that that is a discussion, because my daughter was in the spring in Valleymar, and even though the teachers worked really hard to make that an educational opportunity, it was lacking. And I fear that we could end up having a situation in which really kids are only going to school 2 days and the other 3 days are not really an effective use of their time. So I would really advocate strongly for a common, amongst all the schools, a common approach to what those 3 days where the students are not in class look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we have Jeff Mistel.
Hello, I'm Jeff Masteel. I have a 4th grader and a 1st grader at Cabrillo. I also am a nurse at 2 facilities, one in San Francisco and one in Oakland. I am the nursing supervisor at UCSF Mission Bay. I deal with pediatric and cancer patients. And I am an emergency department nurse over at Highland Hospital in Oakland, dealing with high-risk community hospital. I would like to just talk about the science of reopening, and I can understand everybody's fear about reopening and the unknown. And I'm going to kind of turf it back to a physician that I work with, Dr. Noble, in the emergency department. Has written an op-ed letter signed by most of the critical care and pediatric physicians at UCSF about how reopening is just absolutely imperative. And I couldn't agree more from a father point of view. From a science point of view, I have been working with COVID since it started. I work with COVID patients most days. I was vaccinated in January, and I was exposed many, many, many times. Luckily did not contract it. But the story on that is that masks actually work, and the social distancing works, and hand washing works. As Dr. Noble said in a KCBS Ask an Expert, which I encourage everybody to listen to, there's been 0 transmission from the emergency department at UCSF from a patient to a healthcare worker, or healthcare worker to healthcare worker this entire time. Jean Noble is the UCSF COVID specialist. Also at Highland, we have a couple people were talking about money and disparities in school districts, and I could talk about disparities in healthcare as well. While there is an exceptional amount of PPE available to us now, in Oakland, where I work as well, there was very little amount of PPE available. But the point is that masks do work. They do help prevent the transmission, and I could only beg that we could open hopefully soon, listening to the science. And Jean Noble has offered, I've spoken to her personally, she has offered to share her slides, share presentations, whatever she can to help quell some of the fears that people are having. And it's based on 100,000 person studies in North Carolina and whatnot. So anything we can do to open, I'm happy to help out with. And I encourage everybody to listen to the Jean Noble Ask an Expert on KCBS and the op-ed letter written by the scientists and doctors at UCSF. Thank you all very much. Thank to the teachers, thanks to the board, all the other stuff that everybody said. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, I think that was the last speaker.
I think so. I just want to make sure. There were a couple people that put questions in the Q&A. Kimberly Romero had a comment, so if she'd like to speak. And then Meg, Christine, and Kelly, no last name, but if you'd like to speak, this would be our opportunity. Kimberly Romero?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you. We can't hear you now. Kimberly? Why don't we move on to the next one and we can bring Kimberly back if we get a sound there. Sorry about this. I will go to Meg. I don't know who Meg is. We've got Megan McKenna, who's already spoken, Megan Richards, and sorry, looking for a Meg. And Christine. I don't, since we don't have last names, I think what we could say is that in the speaker box, if you'd like to speak in the Q&A. Oh, okay, thank you, Megan. If you'd like to speak, please feel free to put your first name and last name. We'll just give it just about 1 more minute before we go to board discussion. Okay, I think this ends the period of public comment. So why don't we move to any questions that you may have or board discussion?
I had a couple of questions, Heather.
Sure.
Can you tell me about snack time accommodations? What happens during snack time during the hybrid model?
Yep. So that actually gives me the opportunity to talk about eating in public, as that is one of the biggest concerns of safety, is because people are masked down and they're eating. So obviously we would want 6 feet between any students that are eating their snacks together. If there's the ability to have students outside, that helps a lot. And so I'll give the example of Ocean Shore. I was just there today looking at the finishing of the portables, and they received a number of outdoor tables through the bond. And so it looked to me like one cohort from one class and in a separate set of tables could be a cohort of another class. That they would pull their masks down, they would eat their snacks. Clearly, washing hands before that, washing hands after that are very important. It seems like a lot of details, but I think if we're fastidious about each of those, so basically anytime you make a transition is when you're going to want to wash your hands, or at the very least put some hand sanitizer on that. Then students would go outside, they would find their 6 feet. Not all schools have that many outdoor picnic tables, so they may have to find a different spot, but just making sure that they're 6 feet apart. Then they would eat their snack, put their mask back on, go wash their hands. Typically lunches, breakfast and lunch would be that we would provide those as a grab and go. So Lori Miller's really thought through the process of the A and the B, kind of thinking about when students are in their second day that they would get 4 breakfasts and lunch. So that, like, say if you were on Tuesday, you would get Tuesdays breakfast and lunch, and then you'd get breakfast and lunch for the next 3 days, and those would be grab and go. It's probably likely that as we return in August, that meal service will probably continue to be grab and go, or at least as much outdoor eating as possible.
And I have 2 more things. So this does require a lot of trust and staff, and I guess what I'm wanting to know is what is the process of a reporting? You know, maybe even a kid sees a teacher who's not wearing a mask during this time in which they're supposed to be masked. Like, what's the reporting on that, and what would be the disciplinary, or, you know, what would be the actions so that we make sure that that is immediately shut?
Yep. You bring up a whole can, you know, a worm of issues. So one would be just having a reporting, right? So that if any parent has an ongoing concern about something, is like something that they're seriously concerned about, you would want them to talk to the principal about it. You talked specifically about an issue with a teacher that wasn't following the plan or the protocol, so it wouldn't make sense for the parent to go to the teacher, but they could report it to the principal. But we'll also have some kind of district level reporting method, a hotline or something. It's not something that we'd want to use all the time, because you really bring up the fact of, like, ultimately we need to have the trust in each other, in ourselves that we can do this safely, and each other that we're going to be vigilant about the safety protocols, and that we're going to stay home when we're sick. But then if they're not, you know, typically any discipline issue with an employee starts with a conversation, and then maybe a verbal warning. It could be a written warning, but there's a progressive discipline system for employees that should somebody not be following protocol. I also know that in our conversations with both LSEA and CSEA is that they're very interested in their peers following the protocols. And so sometimes does the person not know? Or is it that it's not important to them? But we will use employee discipline systems as needed, but we want to start with how important this is and how important everybody's participation in the safety protocols is.
Yeah, great. And then my last thing, hopefully I won't get cut off, is just around the upper grades. It's incredibly important for 6th graders to be hanging around 6th graders, and then not to forget the 8th grade, who have now missed out on most of their school year together. So I really would encourage, I guess, the upper grade teachers and staff to really kind of think about that, because those kids really need it just as much as the younger grades. So I just wanted to make a comment about.
Yeah, I think it can be done. We're just not done with that part yet, right? So I don't think it's anything that I can easily solve myself. We'll look at Hillsborough. They are in, Menlo Park is in, but I will say high schools have been really challenged by this. And so we will work with teachers and associations around how can we bring kids back, big kids back.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I can go around. Trustee Villalobos, would you like to? Questions?
Yeah. Am I okay now? I have a lot of questions and comments, so I'm going to just try to. My first question is, we've had positive cases since August in our school district. And we've had quarantine since August in our school district. And so with this plan, I want to know what happens to a class when a teacher, let's say we're back, and let's say a teacher tests positive for COVID, and the class, will need to be tested or quarantined. But my question is, who is going to take over for that class? Because, there's different levels of COVID. There might be somebody who is not having any symptoms, and can, I don't know, Zoom in. Or there's going to be somebody who gets really, really sick and can't teach a class. And my concern is finding subs, because we know that that is an issue in the state of California. And then, with our budget, we're talking about cutting some teachers. And so I want to know who would be taking over the classes if a teacher was positive.
So there are a couple ways that scenario could play out, and I, can't tell you whether it would be A, B, or C, but one would be depending on the teacher's interaction with students is, do we consider all of those students close contacts? At that case, we would actually quarantine the whole classroom. And we will have to be very honest with parents around this. Like, it is a possibility that if someone is positive in your classroom, that your classroom will be back at home learning for 10 days and during that quarantine period. And so that's one piece. Part of it is the employee too sick to work? If that is the case, we would have substitutes. We don't have an enormous level of substitutes, but we do have some. We have had subs during distance learning. We really have not used them very much. But as we are preparing for the priority vaccine list, we are also including regular subs as a part of that vaccine, as a part of the priority. And that is with the expectation that they would be returning with us when we return to in-person learning. So I think we would have some in-person subs. So depending on whether the whole class needs to quarantine at home or whether the teacher is at home as a result of an exposure from outside of school, then depending on when the cohort's last interaction with the teacher, they may not need to quarantine. So you just take that on a case-by-case basis. Probably 4 weeks ago was seriously concerned about subs. We struggle with subs in a good year. And when people have a choice, maybe not to do that, I think this is maybe that year, the risk on that end. But I actually am surprised at how many we do have consistently at this point, and then how many we will have that are interested in returning with us. It's not, the full complement, but I think it probably would be enough to get us through the end of the school year.
And then my other question was, part of that came because I saw the article on the San Diego reopening that happened. And within 2 days, they had over 100 people, teachers and students, that were quarantined, and now it's up to 188. And so I just want to be extra cautious that we're not rushing back just to go, backwards and having, kids at home and no subs or teachers for them. My other concern is the ventilation. I was lucky that I actually got to sit in with CSEA today, because they did answer some of the questions, about the MERV 13. However, one of the concerns was that we have just been instructed that we need to open up all the fans now. And so that's another concern that I have, that we don't just rush back without checking, the fans, the ventilation, when there's a fire and the smoke, but that we can handle it. So are there going to be any more tests done in that area of the fans and ventilation?
So one of the next steps that we would take is just do a walkthrough in terms of the schools around readiness, and we can assess that at that time, or we could engage the expertise of a HVAC expert to do some additional testing. We evaluated our HVAC systems as we were doing the facilities master plan, and yes, our systems are not new, but they are functional and they work, and we certainly can change. I'm no HVAC expert, so I'll just defer to probably not using the right lingo, but that we can bring in a significant amount of the air from the outside, which is what we want to do. We also intend to have windows and doors open, which is something that we will evaluate when we do the walkthrough of the school.
Okay. And then one of my other concerns is the class setup. Within the past few months, I've been visiting some of the schools, and, there's not any kind of setup happening. And so I was wondering if there's a timeline for that, so that perhaps, maybe on the next tour, any board member could see what a classroom is going to look like. And that's the other thing I was curious about, is the size of the classrooms. Is there a particular school that has smaller rooms than another school that has larger rooms, and, spacing them 6 feet apart? How many people or how many students are going to actually be able to fit in that room safely? And so that's kind of been a lingering question for the past few months that I've had. So I'm curious on when that timeline is going to happen. And I also agree with the surveys. I think it was a teacher from Marin, but also a parent who, suggested that, there's not so many people, or is that, I'm sorry, that might be another parent. There weren't as many anticipated families returning to school that they thought. And so I'm curious to when the surveys with Pacifica School District or Panorama can be back, because from what I understand is, we want to start going towards an opening date, and there's still so many questions out there, and I feel like they're important. And so I would like to know that as well. And then the vaccine, it seems like there's some movement there, but I'm just wondering if, I think it was at 4:30, I received another email, from the governor. So I'm just wondering, what is the latest update on the vaccinations for staff and teachers?
Sure, I'll try to make sure that I answer all of those. Okay, so the first one is classroom setup. I was at Sunset Ridge today, and I wasn't through all of their classrooms, but I walked through a first grade classroom, and it was set up to the degree that the desks were arranged that there were 6 feet between them. That would be one place where we could initially get some what it looks like. But, depending on what our decision in terms of when we can return is, that we can spend the next month getting classrooms set up, looking at, does the extra furniture remain in the classroom? Does it get pulled out of the classroom? But we are not far from beginning the setups of the room. Like I said, we will be doing walkthroughs of the school to look at kind of COVID mitigation efforts and make sure that all those things are in place. That would be the next step after we come back from spring break. In terms of the survey, We were hoping to get the panorama survey out the 22nd of the 22nd. We did actually hold off until after this meeting in case we wanted to make any additional changes. But we can also do just a simple survey via Google Forms, where Google Forms leaves us limited is when it takes time to process large amounts of text, is that we're limited in terms of, being able to process that with a very, very small staff. But I do think that there's probably more than what we would get from the than that question on the panorama survey. The panorama survey is going to go out regardless of whether it's around returning or not returning. It is mostly kind of that dipstick of how are we doing? What do you need? What does our focus need to be on? And last one that we did, a few things came out on that, was like some more communication to families around the plans. Really a huge focus on SEL. Kids are struggling, families are struggling. And then how can we support parents? What are some things that we can do? So I do believe that survey is important, whether that be the survey for returning, the number of people that would be returning. We can do that from another standpoint as well. Your third question is, what is the latest on the vaccine? Like I said, we are waiting for something from the governor, and that's kind of a hard thing because, you're always like, something's right around the corner and you don't know what that is. But I know it's around supporting a reopening of school and supporting a safe reopening of school. He had on December 30th or 31st, he released one that was a $2 billion incentive for schools to return. And the amount of money that school districts would have received was less than they would spend on the student testing requirements. And so that was not a popular one. It didn't really end up going anywhere. So I believe this next announcement is around something, could be around testing. I do know the vaccine people have been saying that the vaccine is important to returning. Like that's a message that he and other legislators got loud and clear, that while you can still open schools safely, according to the CDC, and if you follow all of the mitigation, please don't dismiss according to the CDC. I do believe you can open schools safely without the vaccine, with the different mitigation pieces. And when you talk about all of those different layers, the vaccine is just one more. It's also the one that makes the teachers feel the most confident. And so that's kind of the struggle around that. Where are we in that? Is that our County Office of Ed has been working very closely with the Public Health Office. Right now in San Mateo County, the only thing that is holding that back is the supply of vaccine, is that it is severely, severely limited, that we're all learning in California. Hopefully that can be something that changes relatively quickly. Because the county office is interested in being in position the minute that vaccine comes through, we've been asked to gather information from staff regarding their interest in the vaccine. I sent that out just yesterday. I probably have had 240 responses. And our Zoom call today was around, do we have the right stuff on this? One of the things I find, if we look at this and we look at this as a community, one of the things that many of us have been struggling with is our parents' vaccine. And how do I get my 90-year-old parent? How do I get my 75-year-old parent? That is picking up. Like, there were just a few people in there today that haven't yet had an appointment, but people who have struggled with that for a long time. So the Moscone Center opening up, San Francisco State opening up, that is beginning to move through. And as we move through the 75-year-olds and the 65-year-olds, educators are amongst the next group. And so I can't tell you how soon that's going to happen, but I am telling you that we're starting to see movement. And so we could be taking a risk by saying we're waiting for the vaccine, that we don't get it in a timely enough manner, that school reopens. But I think, just like we had spoken of when we talked about what would be the right amount, is that if we should get the vaccine, is can we then open up for a shortened amount of time or something before the end of the school year, so that it's not all or nothing, right? What is that? That's the whole trick to this, is what is that incremental next step? And so the challenge before us is just kind of setting we will come back when, and that's the challenge in that. Did I answer all your questions, Laverne?
I think so. I mean, some of them, we can't help it because it's at the next level. I just had a few comments from the public comment. I'm going to agree that Hillsborough and Menlo Park, their budgets, where we might have $8,000 a student, they might have $19,000 a student that they can spend. And so obviously they would be able to hire more aides or have upgrades. And so I'm not sure if we can be comparable to them. I just wanted to say that. And then I guess in the end, I just want to thank everybody who's on the task force, because this is, I guess the hardest part, as a board member, is all of the different changing information from day to day. One day it could be something, and then the next day it's something else. And so I just want to thank everybody who was on the task force for, taking that in their hands and working with the plan. I do have an idea of, returning back to school, but I'd like to hear from the other board members as well.
Okay. Kai or Jer? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, Trustee Doggett, did you have any questions or?
No, I think most of my questions have been answered already. And again, I'm one of those people that, I sit back, listen, digest, and kind of think about things a little deeper. So I'm just going to sit and listen.
Okay. Trustee Steele, do you have questions or comments?
Yeah. So currently the thought is that in order for a classroom teacher to go back, if you're interacting face-to-face, you would have the second dose of the vaccine, and then we'd give them 2 weeks after. Is that the current thought?
That's actually board discussion, I think, in terms of really what we want to from this discussion is kind of set that timeline for either when or what criteria. And there are a couple ways of doing that. But if the vaccine is one of the criteria, you wait for that second vaccine, and then it's 10 to 14 days. So I think, and it would be the people that were returning to school in person, right? So, full year distance learning teachers at this point, they're on our list to be vaccinated. We want them to have the vaccine, but our return wouldn't be predicated on people that are working solely distantly. After that second vaccine, you wait about 10 days.
And then if a classroom teacher themselves opted to go back without a vaccine, is that something that the school district would allow? Like if a teacher just said, I don't need the vaccine and I would like to, solely do face-to-face with my students, do we give the green light for that?
Yeah. So you bring up a great point, is that every individual has the right to choose the vaccine or not. There may be times several years from now where it could be mandated, is like, okay, if you want to be in a class, just like people have to get, I think, a measles, mumps, and rubella shot or something like that, right? It is mandated, but right now the vaccine has been authorized under the emergency use authorization, and so it cannot be mandated to employees. So it is employees' personal choice on doing that. And we wouldn't know one way or the other than we will know who's vaccinated, and we want to know who's vaccinated, especially if we go through the priority list. We won't know who's not vaccinated. But again, that's an employee's personal information.
So then I guess the determination. So if when we set the timeline, if we're going, the vaccine route, like can a teacher, if they want to. So if a teacher, what would be the earliest if a teacher wanted to forego the vaccines to just start that face-to-face totally on their own choice and accord?
Right. Well, I mean, we're going to start as a school, right? We're not going to start as individual classrooms. So, right. So that's because there are lots of things that need to get in place for that. So we're not going to do individual classrooms. It also, return to in-person instruction can't be based on whether the teacher wants to return or not. We have in our planning, and I don't know whether it was a good idea or not a good idea, but we separated full year distance learning from what we called continuum, which means we started in distance learning, we're moving to hybrid. And so those classes are already made. There may be some families that opt out of that. There may be a few situations where a teacher may choose to go on leave or something, but it's at this point, we're going back. And if you are in the continuum pathway as a continuum teacher, the intent is that that teacher is going to come back. We recognize that there may be some exceptions to that. And at one point, I was concerned about how we will have enough teachers to teach. I mean, there are a couple things that are just real limiters in this whole situation. Number one, we have to settle negotiations. We have to settle the MOU. We cannot go forward without that. So that's one important piece. The second piece is that, yes, we could say we're going back, but we have to have teachers that are in our classrooms and teaching. I do think with the safety conditions and as the numbers are getting lower, like I said, there are teachers that are excited about coming back. So I think probably a month ago, I was a little bit more concerned, like, will we really have enough teachers? But at this point, I think if we kind of pick that right moment, whether it's the right tier level or whether it's the vaccine, I think the majority of teachers will come back.
Yeah, I think questions-wise, those are what I had. I guess comments that I'll make. I personally don't feel comfortable enough to, tell someone to do a job without adequate access to protect themselves. I know with the tier model, the rate and the possibility of contracting it, goes down. However, it's still out there. So without, actually having a protective agent in your body to say, good luck, we're essentially rolling the dice with a person's health and safety. And that just personally doesn't sit well with me. I did enjoy the parent comment who mentioned, so right now they're getting 4 days a week of face-to-face instruction. And then the switch to the 2 day a week face-to-face and sort of that discrepancy. And there's nothing really, we can do about it, but it was a definite point that I thought was interesting, that while, yes, you are substituting virtual face-to-face with real face-to-face, you are missing out on sort of the, teacher calling your name or the, actually getting to see your friend, even if it is through a screen. And I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, I think all my questions have pretty much been covered by everybody else. They were really thorough questions and answers. So I think we need to probably go to deciding about reopening. And, I agree with Trustee Steele that I think the vaccinations to make the employees, not just the teachers. Everyone's been mentioning the staff. So everyone who's on campus that is in contact with the students. My personal opinion is that they need to be vaccinated and given the time for that both doses to take effect. Hopefully that'll be sooner than later. And about the governor, we don't know, that's not something we can set a date, but we will know when it's coming, and we'll have those weeks, from the first dose to prepare the classrooms and to get everybody things set. So I do think the plan does need to go before the county for approval, so that when we're ready to go, we are completely ready to go. And so that would be my comment on that.
We will actually continue to prepare the classrooms even before the first dose of the vaccine gets started, so that we'll be ready to go. Linda, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So some of this takes me putting faith in that there is going to be a vaccine coming. But when I look at the numbers and I look at the trajectory of the school year, I guess what I'm feeling comfortable with is a return like after spring break. My reasoning is that at that point, 30% of the California population will be vaccinated. Our teachers should be vaccinated by then. There'll also be the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Of course, we're going to take, there's going to be a couple approvals, but it looks like it's going to be happening. That'll be in mid-March, and then that's a single dose. I do, speaking from personal experience, my son actually does go to school in San Francisco and actually has gone to school probably 16 times this year since October. And the one thing they said before we led into that and proved true is that the one report was that at the end of the day, everybody was happy and relieved and had smiles and were back to sort of themselves again. So I guess what I want to do is give some hope, that it can, number one, it can be done safely even without the vaccine. Number two, by the time we get to on the other side of spring break, we'll be vaccinated, a third of our entire nation, hopefully at that point. And I do, feel with all the research that it's safe for the kids as long as, again, we're following all the protocols, which it sounds like everyone's doing. So that's my opinion, as if, I kind of am leaning towards a return after spring break. But I do, there are a few things that need to hit before that. But I'm feeling pretty confident that they will. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Is there still a possibility? It's a little bit of a different subject, but of the children that are most behind being able to possibly go to summer school, so that it's not a matter of maybe we start in April and then have to end in May or the first week of June, that the end of spring break might be the beginning of the summer and leading into, so that it's not like a cold cutoff, that the most in need might be able to do summer school. But I know that's different funding and a different discussion.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is the funding there. And then the second piece of that is do we have employees that want to work that? And then the third part of that would be, what is the curriculum that they use? So we could certainly provide learning opportunities, but I can't, I don't want to overpromise that we could have this great summer program when, we're not yet to our even in-person piece. So I do think it could be an important component. The other piece that I will and this is not, I have no polling whatsoever, but as I met with CSEA yesterday and with the teachers today, people are tired. We know that we're right in front of the week before vacation, but they are working hard. And so to think about how this shakes out, and then, okay, great, do you want to do summer school? We'll just have to kind of play that out. We might be better served by saying we're going to start in August in hybrid. The kids that have the greatest need, maybe they could come back a week earlier, or is it possible to extend that day by an hour, or something that is meaningful and helpful. So I don't know the answer to that, but I suspect that the governor is going to, in his next budget, provide some of that, what they call learning loss funds on that end.
I have another comment. I think it was LSCA had mentioned the parcel tax. Mm-hmm. And it does seem like we always have a substantial amount of money left over. Could any of that money be used for some of the learning loss or the hubs or summer school? I mean, why do we have a substantial amount?
So actually, I think the carryover in that, we can actually discuss it when the presentation is made, but just off the top of my head, I think that the carryover is $125,000. On a $1.3 million parcel tax, that's not an atypical give. Like, it's not money that accumulates every year. It's every year there's $125,000, and that is just either overestimation of the costs, but it's not atypical to have that, and it happens in the LCAP on that end. One of the things, if we are looking at, and tonight's presentation on the parcel tax is just, did we follow the law, not bringing up ideas around how to spend it. I actually, if we're looking at how to spend that $125,000 next year, I would like us to consider a 1-year hire of a school nurse. I think that, if we go into this very serious situation, I want to make sure that we have some expertise. We are, on a good year, we are understaffed in terms of the people to do different jobs. And when we think about the kind of potential medical implications, I would like us to consider that. But that's not really, the intent of this conversation. I would love to have a school nurse as we're going through this. It would feel like, to me, one more set of support.
So is there a way that we can have a HVAC expert look at our ventilation?
Yeah, I think we can we can do that.
Okay, so this evening, Dr. Olson, what you need from us is to approve this to go to the county for approval, and then to decide if vaccinations instead of tiers, different color tiers would be the reason to go back.
That would be perfect. So it's actually really I'm not clear. I think that could be, number one is approval of the plan. And then number two would be the criteria for returning. Actually, why don't we do this first? Criteria for returning. Linda, in your answer, did you, is the teachers having the vaccine? The piece.
Yeah, I believe in all the stuff I've been reading and listening. I believe after spring break, all the teachers will have an opportunity to be vaccinated.
But are you saying a date, or are you saying after vaccine?
Or in charge of any of the vaccines, but all the kind of reading I'm doing leads me to believe there's going to be a vaccine for these teachers before spring break. So yes, I would want a vaccine, but I think it would be here by spring break, or that it would be ready to go by then.
I am very hopeful, but I also want to be completely transparent with people, is that there is a possibility that the state of California is so restricted in their vaccine that not all returning staff members would have that. Truly, I hope, and I know that the county office that's advocating for us is really working hard on that, but if there's not vaccine, there's not vaccine. So I just want to make sure that we understand that if we choose the vaccine, that there is a possibility that it not happen it not happen on the timeline that we're hoping for.
Okay. I think I'll move that that we reopen after teachers and staff with in-person learning are totally vaccinated. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Kelly, can you take a vote?
Hi, sorry. Trustee Bradall.
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Steele.
Yes.
And Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and I'll move that we put the plan forward to the county for approval so that we can be ready to start when everything's in place. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Kelly, can you take a vote?
Trustee Bradall.
Yes.
Trustee Brocchini.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Steele.
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item B, the parcel tax. Here you go, Laura. The Parcel Tax Oversight Committee Annual Report.
Thank you.
Betsy Peterson.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and put the parcel tax report on the screen. And then we do have a speaker, Richard Zaromsky is here. If we could bring him to the panel.
I know I'm unmuted now. Ah, there we are. Can you hear me okay, Josie?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Richard, for coming to the meeting to present.
Oh, you're welcome. Good evening, everybody. I'm Richard Zaromsky. I am the chair of the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee. I've been on the committee since we realized at our last meeting since 2008. Since my kids were 7 and 8 years old, just entering into the Pacifica School District. And we're now on, I think, our third parcel tax, and we've done this several times. So hopefully it's informative for you. Obviously, you have the committee report in front of you. I'm happy to answer questions about it too, but I'll just give a brief overview of the meeting that we had in January and the charge of the committee. As you probably have the memorandum in front of you. The parcel tax, now we're in measure D as in dog. I think it's been N and L in the past, but and this started back in the fall of 2008 when the Board of Trustees asked a committee to be formed, and this was pursuant to the parcel tax. The committee was a committee of members of the public to review expenditures and report to the public regarding the match of the expenditures to the ballot language. And that was really the key charge of the committee was ensuring that pursuant to the parcel tax language, the money was being spent according to what was in the ballot measure. So each year we've gone and reviewed the expenditures that were made, matched it up with the ballot language to ensure that the money was being spent as the voters intended. The committee has over time varied with different people, and I think I might be maybe one of the few people that have been on it the entire time. I think there's a couple others, but the committee consists of 6 persons, 6 parents, and 7 community members. And I think it's dropped a couple right now. That's the maximum number of people that can be on the committee, and we're always looking for new folks to join. Right now, there are 6 school representatives, one from each of Cabrillo, Ingrid B. Lacey, Ocean Shore, Ortega, Sunset Ridge, and Valleymar. And then there are community representatives that are just those that have volunteered their time to help go through and ensure that the ballot, that the the money is being spent according to the ballot language. We had our last meeting on January 13th, at which we voted to ensure that the money was being spent according to the ballot language. And so what we've done, again, like I said, we've gone line by line through the items. And what we've done, and I think this answers some of the questions that I heard very early on in the meeting tonight, it's not an approval going forward, it's a look back. And so what we did was we go and look at the expenditures for the previous year and ensure that that money has been spent according to the ballot language. We also do an advisory look forward for the future year to, and the board members actually, Dr. Olson had put the proposal for the following year in front of the advisory committee, and not for a vote, but to just apprise the members as to whether or not, or what the potential expenditures would be, and to, again, if there was anything that the committee members thought was out of the ordinary, to discuss that and bring it up. There was some discussion at the last meeting too about what potential uses there could be, because as somebody said earlier, there is a surplus that's been carried. But again, this committee's charge is not to make decisions, but only to discuss this with the superintendent, with one of the board members who's present, and the other members of the committee. So, like I said, what we did was we went through one by one each of the expenditures to make sure that they were in line with the parcel tax language. The committee voted on them and found that the expenditures were in line with the ballot language. We did again have some other discussion about next year, but I think that most of the expenditures were very close to for the previous year, for the same for going forward. And I think a majority of the money is spent on teacher salary. That's the biggest bucket, but then there's about 3 or 4 others. And then again, we just gave some guidance going forward from there. I think that's been the procedure that we followed each year for the last 10 or 12 years. We meet once a year, and usually in January, to discuss the ballot measure and the expenditures. And we did fulfill our charge this year. I don't think there were any dissents on the expenditures. I think everybody felt like the money was being spent in accordance with the ballot language, which is what we've been asked to do. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about the meeting or any of the expenditures that were made.
Okay, do any board members have any questions regarding the parcel tax? I think it's at a future meeting that we discuss what to use it for next year. So this, like you said, was looking back. So I can go down the line. Trustee Burkini, any questions?
No questions.
Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Trustee Doggett?
No questions.
Trustee Steele?
No questions.
Okay. I think that's just informational. So thank you very much, Richard, for coming every year and going over that with us. And leading the meetings. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Being in the meetings, I appreciate you doing that.
You're welcome.
Item C, Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report. Josie Peterson.
Okay, thank you. As with the parcel tax oversight, we also have a bond oversight committee. And tonight we do have one of our members here to talk about the meeting and present, and that is Betsy Landrum from Sunset Ridge. And I can see that she's also being brought forward. We also do have Cece Meng, our project manager, here in attendance at the meeting as well. So thank you so much, Betsy, for coming to the meeting. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for putting that document up on the screen for everyone to see. So hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Betsy Landrum, and I'll make this short. I'm a proud parent of a child at Sunset Ridge. I recently joined the Bond Oversight Committee, and my first meeting was on January 13th this year as well. And yes, CC Ming is the project coordinator, and she presented us with the full report on the Pacifica School District Measure O bond. She provided updates on all of the projects as well as photographs. And you can see on the screen, hopefully, that there's a summary of the bond projects. However, the full presentation is available on the district website for you to peruse through and get a better handle on everything. And so with that, and most importantly, I'm happy to report that the bond funds have been spent in accordance with the bond language and the district's facility master plan. And that's the most important conclusion from our meeting. So thank you all very much. This concludes my update.
Okay, was Cece going to present or just answer questions?
She's just here in attendance in case there's any questions and to support.
Okay. All right, I can go down the list of the trustees to see if there's any questions. Trustee sorry, you're moving around on my screen, so it might be a different order. Trustee Burkini.
I have no questions, but I do have one comment. Is just hopefully we can make an effort to get 2 more community members on the panel for next time. But I thought it was a good meeting, and I'm excited about where it's headed.
Okay, Trustee Villalobos, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Trustee Steele.
No questions.
Okay, Trustee Doggett.
No questions.
Okay, so I think this also was informational. And so thank you everyone for participating in that and presenting. So I think now we have item 11, future agenda items.
Future agenda. I had to turn my power. I had to turn my power off so that I could pull up my future agenda items. So coming up on March 2nd and 3rd, we have the board governance workshop that will be 4 to 7 p.m. where we will, every time you have a new board member, you have a new board. And so we want to welcome Trustee Steele as well as work on our governance practices together. So looking forward to that. And then March 10th is a very busy board meeting. We will give you an update on our progress and any new information that we have related to the COVID and return to school. Josie Peterson will give a budget update because we're getting ready for the second interim report. We need to do the certification of the second interim financial report. It's important to talk about projected enrollment and staffing because that's one of the most important indicators in terms of a district's budget. And so the other part about the March meeting is that for any potential certificated layoffs of either administrators or teachers is we have to do what's called a March 15th notification. And so because we don't know the results of the governor's budget, we won't know that until mid-May, and that's even still sometimes an estimation. You have to put yourself in position to make the right staffing choices in May and in June. And so there will be some resolutions in terms of possible releases, reassignments, non-reelections of certificated employees. And then could possibly be some classified layoffs as a result of lack of work or lack of funds. At this point, we don't anticipate bringing many of those back unless they're jobs that aren't needed during this period of time during the pandemic. But the reason for the length of the meeting in March is to be in position to make the right choices that we need for staffing in May and in June. We do have a CSBA delegate election and may have a few other items on the agenda for that. Anything else
I have some requests.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just wondering if there's been any follow-up with racial equality for the board or administration, having some training on that.
Yeah, I reached out to Nicole Anderson, who was doing the San Mateo County School Boards Association. I notice when I look at other board agendas that she is very busy working with other school boards doing work studies. So I haven't heard back from her. I was going to re-up that, redo the email on Friday just to see if we could hear back from her.
And then in the other is for the AB 1968, the new law that says government agencies need to have the land acknowledgement. And like I said, I reached out to the Native American Caucus, and somebody did give me a template that we could use. It would be nicer though if there was, you know, an Ohlone who could, you know, have some kind of participation or just, you know, say, yes, this looks, this looks appropriate. But I think that would be very important, the AB 1968.
Okay.
Is that something that gets said at like every board meeting or like at the start of every school, or is it a?
You know what I can do, Jared? Yeah. You know, like with the Pledge of Allegiance, it's done in the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
But I can send some information to Heather and then she can send it.
Could that go to all of us? Because I need to be informed about that also.
Yep. Linda, you had something?
I was going to say, bring up the land acknowledgement issue, so it was already addressed. So thank you.
Perfect. We would like to get you eventually a bond kind of update on where we've made some progress on our bond, and also workforce housing. I believe March is going to be a very, very busy month, so we will wait until we have a little bit more time. But those things are working in the background, and we are making progress on those. So, okay, any other agenda items?
No, okay. All right, we will adjourn the meeting at 10:02.
All right.
Thank you,
very
everybody.
much.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Some sleep.
Good night.